Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby with Vice President of the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio, here on WAKR. And it's brought to you by our good friends at NECA-IBEW. Bobby, I thought today, because you and I have swapped so many stories pertaining to Progressive Field, at that point, Jacobs Field, the origin, how it all came together. But I'm not sure the audience knows some of the stories about putting Progressive Field together then and kind of where we are now with Progressive Field. So I thought today we could spend some time talking about our home away from home, Progressive Field.
Well, it is a beautiful baseball only ballpark settled right in an urban setting. That was one of the uh, focal points when we moved out of gigantic municipal stadium, trying to find a location in downtown Cleveland that fit for a cozy, intimate baseball only ballpark, going from 70 plus thousand seats at that time for only 43,000. Um, we're at 35,000 at the moment. I think you have to go all the way back to May of 1984 when the voters of Cuyahoga County defeated a plan to build a domed multi-purpose stadium for the Indians and the Browns to keep us in the state in the same facility. And the voters handily defeated that ballot. And so then it took, if you think about it, that was May of 1984, I believe, and we opened up. Um, Progressive Field, Jacobs Field at the time. Although a lot of people don't know, the original name of the ballpark was Indians Ballpark. That was before we had any naming rights. I don't know if people remember that Dick Jacobs actually paid the naming rights. It wasn't just handed to him as owner of the team. He paid for 13 years for the naming rights on that ballpark, changing it from Indians Ballpark to Jacobs Field. And then when that ran out, he chose not to continue to have his name um, attached to the ballpark. And therefore, we went out searching for a new name for the building. And Progressive local company obviously stood up and took care of that. But with the defeat in May of 1984 of the ballot of a multi-purpose dome stadium, which thankfully that did not happen in retrospect. It took 10 years. So if that was in May of 84, April of 94 is when we opened up our building. So the 10 years in between the vote in 1990 that narrowly passed, and then in 92, the excavation and the construction of the ballpark took place. So a long 10 years, but for those naysayers who did not believe that a facility, the Gateway Economic Sports and Entertainment Complex with us and the Cavaliers next door would be a driver of economic impact for our town, they certainly got it wrong.
Vice President with the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio, with us at WAKR. Bobby, I don't know how much you know with the blueprints, and maybe you had a little feedback on it, but the overall design of the stadium was pretty unique when you look at the left field with the scoreboard and the high wall and then right center and everything. Can you share some stories with the design of the stadium for us?
Well, I have to stop you right there because you have to reference it as a ballpark. We are not a stadium, we are a ballpark. The connotation of ballpark is more intimate. We are a baseball only facility, although we have played hockey on it. Ohio State and Michigan did have a hockey game at our place. We had some tobogganing and ice skating, but we really are a ballpark. it's one of the things that our VP of ballpark operations, Jim Folk, and I, uh, anyone in a meeting, any setting, uses the word stadium, we stop them right there and tell them ballpark. We are a ballpark. The two words have different meanings in our minds. Stadiums are like Cleveland Stadium, gigantic, large, cavernous. That's not what we are. Um, when we sat with HOK, they were renowned for building the ballpark in Kansas City, and with the fountains and a restaurant and all of those sorts of things. And HOK had become one of the leading architectural design firms in sports all around the world. So you bring to the table what's happening in other places around the world, not just the United States, but around the world, and what people are asking for when they come to a ballpark. As you know, not everybody is the same. Um, we have luxury suites, we have premium club areas, we have mid-level club areas, we have 30,000 plus general seats, we have standing room with drink rails now. So all across the board, whatever it is that you seek as a fan for your entertainment value and what you're able to spend and invest in that type of entertainment, we needed to provide that. So at the beginning, people wonder 121 suites. When we sat there, we're trying to figure out that was by far the most of any ballpark ever built in the United States, 121 suites. And we needed to do that because our owner, Mr. Jacobs at the time, turned the lease portion of the suites back into the construction of the facility. In Baltimore and in Chicago, if a corporate entity leased a suite in either of those two ballparks, that money went directly into the pocket of the owner, the lease portion. And Dick Jacobs said no to that. He said, nope, I want this facility to get done. So I am willing to have all the lease portions. This is how the corporate community can be participants in the building of this ballpark. And so their lease portion went right back into um, the construction costs. You know, the field sits on only 12 acres. There's a right-hand turn in right field, a 90-degree angle when you see it out in right field. Well, that's the corner of Carnegie and Ontario. I'm sorry, Carnegie and East 9th Street. Carnegie and Ontario. Those are three main intersections or three main streets in downtown Cleveland. Ontario to the west, East 9th to the east, and Carnegie to the south. And we had to fit our ballpark right in there. Um, Therefore, you get the 90-degree angle in right field. As we walk through the other nuances, behind the fence picnic parties at Cleveland Stadium pregame were really popular, and they were great for group outings. So we just thought we would continue that. So we put a picnic area behind the center field wall where the trees are. That eventually went away, and we eventually then created Heritage Park to celebrate our rich history. Um, but some elements from Cleveland Stadium we wanted to try and keep. Some we, brand new, such as the 19-foot wall, which is half the size of the Green Monster in Fenway. People may not realize, but when you look at next time you look at our bleachers, you'll see 6 sections. The one on each end are a little triangular. They weren't added till the second year. There were only, it looks like they were there from the very beginning, but we had only 4 sections, and the large scoreboard actually overhang those 4 sections. Now the scoreboard sits perfectly balanced, the symmetry with the 6 sections of the bleachers. The Terrace Club was something that HOK again built in Kansas City, but didn't have it extending out where every seat could watch the game. In Kansas City, it was a flat wall. And if you were in the second row, you really didn't have a chance of seeing the action on the field, maybe some outfield action. But HOK learned and designed the Terrace Club, which was incredibly popular in the first 10, 12 years of existence at our facility. It's had a whole different changes. That's one of the things we're thinking about in the future. What do we do with the Terrace Club? But as far as the facility, we wanted for most of the ballpark, if you took a walk around the main concourse, that about 80% of the time you can see the action on the field. We had those jury boxes for people who remember those right above the lower bowl. And we ended up taking those out, putting in new, local restaurant concession stands, a variety of different home plate, the Lexus Home Plate Club, so that we actually open it up more. So when you do walk the concourse, there's more opportunity to see the action on the field as you go for a little stroll, which in our business we called the third inning stroll. After about an hour, people get up out of their seats, go to the concession stand, go to the restroom, maybe take a little walk, and then come back to their seats. So we didn't want them to miss any of the action as they did that.
Couple of the aspects that I like that you've added, and I'll get the years confused because they go by so quick when you get my age, but I love the corner bar edition. I love Heritage Park that you touched on. And I also like the area out in center field when you really opened it up to take a look at the landscape of the city of Cleveland. And I think that was maybe 5 to 7 years ago. I love those three additions.
Yes, when we turned 20, 22 years old as a facility, we really took a step back and said, okay, we've taken care of the fans for the first 20 plus years in this building pretty well. We've provided, we think, some of the very best sports entertainment that you can invest in. But what about the next 20 some years? What about those fans? How do we take care of them? What is HOK, the original architect? What have they learned in building brand new facilities all around the world in 20 years since we opened up? And the discussion began with group gatherings. Younger people don't access the ball game like you and I. I mean, we're comfortable sitting in our seats. If we have the opportunity, we might even keep score. We care about the 2-2 pitch. Is it a curveball or a slider, or is it going to be a fastball high and away? The younger people, there are some who play the game who are really into that, but the vast majority just want to have a good time with their friends. And how do they do that? Sitting in a seat, and one of their friends is 7 seats down the row. They didn't really interact with them during the game. So how do you create that group gathering area? The concept of the corner bar. The Colorado Rockies built one in the upper deck because nobody in sports was thinking that the valuable real estate in the lower bowl, that you're going to open up to that concept where you're not selling an individual seat, but people are gathering as a group. How does that make sense? Well, when you want to build your brand and you want to engage younger people, the kids clubhouse concept that we built up in the mezzanine, the family deck, the corner bar, that keeps people engaged and participating with your product. So one of the best things we ever did was the corner bar. I never really thought, Ray, that we'd ever sell a seat that had no section number, no row number, and no seat number. unless we were sold out and it was standing room only. But we have really done very well. Our fans, younger fans, of course, um, and not just younger fans, love the fact they can stand with the drink rail and they're in the lower bowl and they're there with a whole communal group. It really adds to their enjoyment. And so, yes, the corner bar, one of the great additions. And those who really love our history, the Heritage Park, two-tiered level, most recent addition is Frank Robinson's statue commemorating the day that he brought the lineup card in 1975 out to home plate at Cleveland Stadium to become the first African American manager in the history of the game of baseball. Um, for those that love to just connect with our history, that's a wonderful place to go for that third inning stroll and take it all in.
VP with the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio, with this week's edition of Hey Bobby, brought to you by NECA-IBEW. Bobby, the other aspect I wanted to touch on this week, because you've been there for many of them, not all of them, but many of them, of some of the greatest trades in Cleveland Indian history. And you don't need to go real deep here, but maybe some of the ones that stand out to you. And what I mean by the greatest trades is ones, because GMs and presidents, they don't go into a trade trying to really work somebody over, because then you might get one trade and then they'll never come back to you. But ones that worked out for us the best, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it depends how you want to look at what do you mean by worked out. The kind of thing that, unless a person gets into the Hall of Fame, is that your standard for, quote, working out, that you acquire a player that becomes a Hall of Famer. I just mentioned a name, you could add Frank Robinson to that list, acquiring him in a trade and then having the social impact that he did, again, becoming the first African American manager in baseball history for the Cleveland Indians. That's a pretty substantial, impactful trade. Um, Mike Hargrove, you could think about Grover in 1979 coming over and for Paul Dade, and all of a sudden, here's a guy who spends 20 plus years in an Indians uniform, not only as a pretty darn good player, but as an elite manager, taking us to 5 straight division titles, 2 AL pennants, et cetera, 700 wins. So you can think about that. Then it gets down to the nitty gritty for me. It's hard. The final 4, I guess: Omar Vizquel for Reggie Jefferson and Felix Fermin. I remember John Hart calling me to tell me, "Okay, I got the release for you. This is the man that's going to solidify it all." He was sort of one of the final pieces of the puzzle. Um, was having a superior, premier, elite defensive shortstop who obviously ended up to learn how to hit later in his career. So that was a good one. That was in 93. Then you can go to Corey Kluber, the 3-team trade with the Padres and the Cardinals and us. Trading deadline deal, guys in Double-A, nobody knows them, wondering what in the world are the Tribe doing, sending Jake Westbrook, a veteran pitcher, off to St. Louis, and you're getting a Double-A guy, and what in the world are those guys thinking? And another salary dump, and et cetera, et cetera. And then Corey Kluber, because our scouts saw him as a strike thrower, as a big, strong guy who could pitch 200 plus innings. If his mechanics were fine tuned, we knew he had a good work ethic. Obviously, we never thought that you look at a guy in Double-A and say that's a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, but you thought he has the makings of being a guy that could be very impactful for you. So I think Corey Kluber has to be added in that, becoming the kind of player and pitcher that he is. For me, Kenny Lofton, coming over in a winter meeting trade, probably the most dynamic player in Indians history. in my opinion, I just don't know if there's an, again, I haven't seen every player play on the diamond, but what he did for us for over a decade, um, just remarkable. The All-Star games and just again, the most dynamic leadoff hitter easily in Indians history, becomes a member of the Indians Hall of Fame. So Eddie Taubensee and Willie Blair go to the Houston Astros for Kenny Lofton. I think that was a pretty darn good deal. And Kenny became, obviously such an important piece to our success in the 90s. And that, you know, you can maybe even go back to Tris Speaker all the way back to before 1920. He's the player manager of yeah, sorry about he's the player manager of the 1920 World Series champs, gets into the Hall of Fame, and so that's a pretty good deal. But getting Sandy and Carlos for Joe Carter and Chris James, um, those two guys, the leadership, the heart and soul of the renaissance of this franchise, both end up in the Indians Hall of Fame, both multiple All Stars. Um, I don't know if you could, we all have our difference of opinions, but um, Sandy and Carlos made such an impact on this organization. Sandy still does to this day, as does Carlos, working with our minor league guys and as an alumni ambassador. Um, they both just are so passionate about our organization. Again, both into the Indians Hall of Fame. So I'd say sending Joe Carter. Hank Peters was involved with both the Kenny Loft and John Hart, Hank Peters group. Danny O'Dowd are at the top two with Kenny Lofton, Sandy, and Carlos, with Omar Vizquel not too far away from that. So those are my picks for the best trades.
There you go. Another edition of Hey Bobby with Vice President with the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio, brought to you by NECA-IBEW. Hopefully you've enjoyed like I have. We'll reconnect next week. Bobby, as always, man, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Ray. Take care, my friend. Go Tribe.